Thank you very much indeed. It's a privilege to go last, and hope everyone's still going to bear with me. My name is Dr. Rowland. I'm the Director and Chief Medical Officer for Amazon Web Services Public Sector Health International. I'm also a clinician. I'm an academic interventional radiologist and still faculty at University College London. What I'd like to do is to talk very briefly about, give you some background about AWS, because cloud's been mentioned a lot in the talk so far, and you may or may not be aware of what AWS actually is and what cloud is doing to support healthcare and life science organizations around the world, and also provide 4 things that we're doing that are actively supporting equitable research, and give you some resources that if you'd like to tap into them and take advantage of them, then I think that would be a great way forward. So, lots of references to cloud, and it's worth exploring what cloud actually is and why it's being leveraged across all of these different areas. First of all, I'd say it's a real privilege to support UK Biobank and DNA Nexus. This is an incredible global project. It really is outstanding and very differentiating around the world. So we support not only UK Biobank and Genomics England, but also lots of other national biobanking projects around the world, such as the one in Melbourne, the Canadian Genome Project, G42, which is the big UAE genomics program that's just been launched, and the like, and in Singapore, the Singapore Genome Institute. It's been said several times, and Mark mentioned the word democratization a lot. I think democratization is the key. What cloud is able to provide is democratization to data, tools, and also applications that have been built on the cloud to get out into the hands of those end users. And so applications built, for instance, by DNA Nexus. And we're really able to then bring these tools into the field where they can be accessed over the internet at the point of need. So organizations don't need to have massive supercomputing, high-performance compute on premises. They can tap into resources as and when they need them. So the cloud is really on-demand access to computing resources, which has got pay-as-you-go pricing, which is interesting because it means you don't have to invest up front in all these resources. You can really use them on an as-needed basis. AWS is the cloud computing arm of Amazon. And so it was originally set up as data centers to support Amazon.com. They then realized that they could actually support lots of other organizations around the world. So now we've actually got 30 geographic regions around the world. And each region is comprised of different availability zones with cross duplication of data. And so it's very highly robust. And as users, you can tap into these regions wherever they are, and so you can make sure that your data is held in secure environments which are compliant to the country's own compliance, because obviously that's the regulatory authority of every country is slightly different. And so we work very closely with countries' regulations to make sure that the data is held securely and effectively on behalf of the users. We have been investing in our healthcare and life science resources. So again, why would AWS as a cloud computing infrastructure organization care? Well, we've been investing heavily over the last 4 years, specifically in healthcare and life science expertise. That's why I have people like me as the chief medical officer. And we're really proud to be able to support some of our biggest customers to go faster, because we're able to be that bridge between the technology side and the mission to make sure that they come together most effectively, and all of this is optimized. We have our healthcare mission is to enable access and delivery of person-centered care to improve outcomes at a lower cost by accelerating the digitization and utilization of healthcare data. And I think the key to that mission is to enable, because we don't want to do the doing, we don't want to be the research analysis platform, we don't want to be an electronic healthcare record, but we do want to provide the best services and underlying infrastructure, which all of these things can be built and then scaled. Because the key to cloud computing isn't just that you don't think of it as computer in the sky that you just tap into and have to start writing code from scratch. What we provide is also other services which are managed behind the scenes. So you can actually bring these services together, like computing power, databases, and some specific healthcare and life science shaped services together, which can be brought together and daisy-chained to build applications faster. And it's the speed to application build which is really, really critical. And so we're really proud to support lots of NHS applications. We're working with healthcare organisations around the world. And in fact, 19 of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies around the world are also platformed on AWS. We're very deeply involved in the research organisations, so we have the Oxford and AWS Research Cloud. We've got a collaboration with UCL, for instance, with the Centre for Digital Innovation, and so we're working very closely with academia as well to support both pharmaceutical work, biopharma, and academic research more broadly. There are some reasons why genomics in the cloud works very well. Previously, there was a concern about cloud saying, there are concerns about cloud because of safety and security of data. Now we're finding that organizations are going to cloud because of its security and safety of data. Data in the cloud is owned by the end users. So AWS doesn't have access to it. That's a really critical thing to understand. The data is the user's own. Very strict access controls, and so they're the things that were brought in by DNA Nexus to make sure that only the right people get access to the right data at the right time. And the other thing that it brings is auditability. Really fine-grained control and audit means that there's a shared responsibility. The cloud provider provides all of the physical infrastructure, virtualization layer. All of these things are taken care of. You don't need to patch anything anymore. So all of those security issues are taken off the hands of the end user. Users still need to provide those access controls and make sure everything is encrypted in a transit at rest. But being able to trace who's using the data, where it's being used, when it's being accessed, and that audit trail really does add a layer of security and trust to the whole system. When it comes to agility, you can spin up resources as needed. And so when we're talking about massive data infrastructure, data can be available in minutes. So you can create virtual servers, and it doesn't take months to buy new infrastructure and bring it in on premises and to network it. It's available at the point of need. Availability and durability is brought in. So when you talk about availability, it means does the system stay up and does it work? As a clinician, I want to make sure that my systems are available when I actually turn them on. And because of this very resilient infrastructure that's been built, we have something called 5 nines of availability, which is 99.999% uptime. And so AWS provides the most durable and robust cloud available, and that's why a lot of organizations are leveraging it. For instance, New South Wales are migrating all of their cloud applications onto AWS, so the whole of New South Wales healthcare organizations, and they've found they've reduced their unplanned downtime by about 70%. Cost reduction is key. And again, part of that's due to reduced downtime. You have less impact on cost, but also you only pay for what you use. And so with the amount of redundancy that's required, and again, that really talks about the elasticity point, you don't need to over provision. And so when you're building systems, you can scale up as needed if you're doing a big experiment, but then you can scale down when you're then not using it. So we did an analysis about cost savings and across 31,000 servers that are being used by organizations, and we found that the average CPU usage was only 21% on premises. And in fact, only 48% of provisioned storage was used. And so 52% of provisioned storage was sitting there, consuming electricity, consuming all the resources, but actually not having any data stored on it. And I think that also goes into the sustainability piece and about carbon usage and ESG. So a lot of organizations want to get a handle on their carbon footprint. We know that using cloud actually is over 3.5% or 3.5 times more efficient than running your own data centers. And so again, there's another big use pushing to cloud. Democratization, as we've spoken about, is very critical. Being able to tap into these resources at the point of need. And going to the last point about the fascinating piece around IoT and wearables, the connection between the cloud and the edge is critical. And so we're spanning with services between the IoT and the edge, and we're releasing a bunch of specific services around IoT Core, IoT Greengrass, TwinMaker, these specific services that can be built together to build out the IoT piece as well. And the piece in the middle is Greenbox, this managed service for genomics. As I said, you don't need to build from scratch. So at the end of last year, we released a service called Amazon Omics, which is a petabyte scale service for data, and it automatically stores data in the most appropriate storage class. It optimizes the environment in which it's stored in to have the best cost, and so you can reduce cost by about 40%. And it also automatically stores data in appropriate categorization. And so again, we hope that this is going to really allow organizations that want to build out their applications to have these off-the-shelf services to build those applications faster. As well as all of these things we're doing, we're also running specific programs. So we have an open data program on AWS, which means that as an organization, if you have data that you'd like to open source for the public good, AWS will actually store that for free. And we'll make those data sets available and on the cloud, so researchers don't have to download them, you can access them where they are, and we'll provide AI machine learning tools against them that you can then use to build applications. And so there's a whole list of different resources there, and you can have a look again further online. And again, the key is that free storage. So I'd just like to briefly touch on 4 specific things we're doing around the sort of equitable aspects of research. The first is that we are providing cloud credits for research. This is just a broad program. So if you do want to access some of those databases, or if you want to do research on the cloud, we have got the CCR program, which is on a rolling basis, and we can provide that to all researchers, all comers, looking at either their own research workloads or those open data sets. The second is the Health Equity Initiative, which we launched last year. That's $40 million available for over 3 years for programs that address health equity. And there are 4 specific areas there that we're looking at. One is health equity in outcomes. So again, one thing that COVID did show is these massive differences in different populations. And so equitable outcomes is critical. The second is around social determinants of health. So research going to look at how social determinants can affect health outcomes. The third is around just gathering data sets which can highlight inequity in health. So we saw in one of the keynotes this morning, there's a really big differential in populations that have had genomic data captured against them. The West African population is much more characterized than the East African population, for example. So we're working with some interesting health equity programs in East Africa at the moment, looking specifically at that. And the fourth area is around diagnostics. So inequity of access to diagnostics. The Global Lancet Commission on Diagnostics came out last year, which showed that around 50% of the global population doesn't have access to basic diagnostics. So how we can address programs there. So again, very happy to look at that further. We've already dispersed around $14 million of that 40 million to 90 programs around the world. And that's all, you can see that online. Looking specifically at what we're doing with the UK Biobank, I think the main thing about democratizing access to data comes through the research analysis platform. I won't go into it because we've spoken a lot about it already in the last hour. But again, this is a really, really important flagship program. Organizations around the world are looking at what DNA Nexus have done to support UK Biobank to make this data available at the point of need to researchers in a very controlled and accessible manner. And I think it's an absolute testament to what all the teams have done, that 75% of researchers now can access this data from anywhere where they are in the world. Low and middle income countries, you can be a researcher with a great idea, accessing these tools and this data from anywhere in the world. So it goes from just having these ivory towers to really opening up the global research group. And I think that's the way that we're going to get exponential discovery, is by just making this kind of data available to more people. And Again, it was mentioned in one of the talks at the very beginning. AWS has actually made $500,000 worth of cloud computing credits available to either early stage researchers or researchers from low and middle income countries on a yearly basis. And we want to see that used. You know, we don't want to leave $1 left at the end of each year. We want to make sure that everything is consumed. So please do reach out and make sure that this offer is taken up. Again, we've already consumed around $200,000 to 80 researchers, and we're going to have another $300,000 available to 2023. So thank you very much. I'd just like to leave you with these three takeaways. One is that cloud democratizes access to data and tools, and also the applications that are built on it. I hope I've demonstrated that cloud is already being leveraged by research organizations and companies around the world to do research at scale. And finally, I'd just like to say again, it's a real privilege to support both UK Biobank and DNA Nexus.